Yay, I found my room.
We did it. I will give everybody about a minute or so to start coming in the room, and then we'll kick things off. Morning, everybody. Maybe a little bit more. Still see some people in the main room deciding, so we'll give it a few more seconds. Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? We may have a few more joining us in a little bit. Welcome. I hope you're all as excited as I am and as I know our panelists are. My name is Jessica. I'll be the chair today. I am the teaching and learning specialist at CETL. And what I'm going to do is lay a few ground rules for how this will go, and then I'll let the presenters start, which we'll be starting with Chris. So just a few things to know. We're going to go through all of the presentations before jumping into Q&A at the end. With that said, use the chat as a place to place your questions that you have for the panelists. Anything that comes up as you're listening, that's a great place to put it, and we'll try to go back to it. And yeah, I think we're going to have a really good conversation and a lot of really good presentations. And then for the panelists, as you already know, 10 to 12 minutes. I'll give you a 2-minute warning. I guess I'll just do 2 minutes on my screen. Hopefully you'll be able to see that, or I'll wave frantically at the 12-minute mark. And we'll just transition between each person. So you'll stop sharing, the next person, I'll announce who it is. We'll go up and share and just introduce yourself. Yeah, and so yeah, I think we're good to go. Are there any questions? Anything I forgot? Okay, if not, let's go ahead and get started with Chris.
All right, give me just a second to get situated. Appreciate you all for being here. Hope we're doing great today. Feeling fine and dandy, peachy keen. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Leahy, or Chris Kashani, and I'm a graduate teaching assistant in the Communication Studies Department. Today, we're going to discuss how to use generative AI to empower first-year students. A brief overview of my discipline and department is that our discipline is very interdisciplinary, and our department is really pioneering us as a discipline to be more intersectional and social justice oriented. We take an interdisciplinary approach, blending various perspectives, including but not limited to linguistics, psychology, and philosophy. In short, communication studies allows us to explore and investigate social, cultural, and rhetorical phenomenon across infinite contexts, highlighting the complex and ongoing process of communication and exploring notions of power and positionality in both theory and practice. So a little bit about my teaching philosophy. In theory, I kind of pull from a few different modes of thinking: critical communication pedagogy, performance pedagogy, and engaged pedagogy. And what that looks like in practice is basically, again, reiterating being very social justice oriented and considering voices that have been historically and politically erased, oppressed, and or otherwise marginalized. I also emphasize student agency and advocacy, which we'll talk a little bit more later. On the surface, this means collaborating with students on the course syllabus, assignments, lesson plans, you name it, acknowledging their individual and collective needs, both academically and professionally. In my opinion, this type of collaboration is extremely helpful for GE classes with students from diverse academic backgrounds. Calling back to my interest in performance pedagogy, I believe effective teaching is adaptable and improvisational. Otherwise, going more into what it means to be engaged in the classroom, my approach to teaching is more invested in class discussions over lectures. As much as I love lecturing, students do not. They value variety, so I provide that through discussions, activities, workshops, again, you name it, alongside lectures which cater to their needs, not mine. Ultimately, I believe lectures can reinforce power dynamics that discourage student engagement and hinder overall learning. Class activities are my bread and butter. Again, going back to that performance pedagogy, they embody what we're learning, fostering community application and playfulness, key ingredients to creating an engaging learning environment. And last but not least, experimentation that is shame-free. My classroom offers a space for learning without fear of punishment, specifically in regards to generative AI. Many new students likely face discouragement from using it in high school, particularly in the public education system. Meanwhile, private schools jumped on that bandwagon ASAP. This lack of adoption in public schools hinders application-based learning and opportunities for students to learn how to responsibly and effectively use generative AI. So why Gen AI? The good news, as a few people have mentioned previously, it's not going to replace our jobs anytime soon. Students prefer that human interaction. And also, obviously, that number is growing as to how many people are using it, but they don't use it as much as we think. It's nowhere near as much as we think. For instance, UC Davis recently conducted a self-reported study on their campus, which revealed only 60% of students have used generative AI at least once in the past year. And the way students are using generative AI is very specific and limited out of fear of punishment or getting caught. At work, things are very different. A global study found 71% of men between the ages of 18 and 24 use generative AI frequently compared to roughly 59% of women of the same age range. Now, we can attribute this to obvious power dynamics of sexism and hierarchies in and out of the workforce, add layers of other identity markers such as race, sexuality, and disability, and I guarantee these differences and disparities become more concerning and apparent. These emerging statistics let us know students aren't using it as much as they need to be once they're in the workforce, and that there's less shame in using it at work than at school. As for the concerning decline in student literacy and competency that we're all pretty well aware of at this point, generative AI helps fill in some of those gaps. I can't speak for everyone, but I constantly find myself in damned if I do, damned if I don't scenarios where I have to decide whether to utilize our limited class time and resources to catch students up to speed or fully immerse them in our classroom curriculum. It always feels like a losing battle no matter what I pick. Moving on to the state of public education. What does it say that the largest education system in the US has dramatically low enrollment? I'll give you a hint. It's not just because of COVID. 1 in 3 jobs no longer require a college degree. Let that sink in. Not just any jobs, but high-skilled jobs. At Google, Apple, Microsoft, I anticipate this number to only get bigger, largely due to public education's constantly being 10 to 20 years behind. Current trends show students prefer trade schools over traditional schools. Our job market is extremely uncertain and unstable. Students need reassurance and more application-based learning, and that's where generative AI comes in. So let's talk about how to approach AI in the classroom through the 3 pillars of policy, practice, and dialogue. In terms of policy, be clear with your syllabus. State your AI policy. State your university policy. Are they complementary? Are they contradictory? Figure it out. You also need to redefine plagiarism using specific examples and real-world examples. Students are over the copy-paste formula of that plagiarism section in the syllabus. It's not good at getting them to avoid plagiarizing when there's the hypocrisy right in their face. In my syllabus, I provide students with clear examples of what plagiarism looks like with or without generative AI, along with why they should care about plagiarism by connecting it to real-world context, such as selling illegal Disney merch on your Etsy shop. Stress the importance of personal integrity, not academic integrity. Allow students a space to practice using generative AI in the classroom, out of the classroom. Give them a choice to use it. We are their first point of guidance and mentorship. Personally, all my assignments encourage or at least allow the use of generative AI. It's important to specify what assignments should or shouldn't use generative AI. Dedicate time in class to address and discuss the benefits and limitations. You don't have to have all the answers. In fact, some students are likely to know more than you. That's why it's so important to be humble and collaborative. A little prep goes a long way, so locate how students might find this useful or where they might run into some obstacles if they choose to use it. Again, make sure it's optional. Don't force them to use it, but don't entirely omit it from the classroom curriculum if you can. Help them understand how to use it ethically and effectively. Lastly, encourage ongoing conversation through dialogue. This could mean negotiating how they are graded or what they are graded on. Ask them what they think is ethical or unethical. I'd recommend doing this through anonymous hard copy surveys. It just provides a little bit more honesty and transparency and helps you understand where your students are at. A bit of a rhetorical question, but feel free to sound off in the chat. What do we think is the most important thing on this slide? There was one big important takeaway. I'll give you a second. You can type it in the chat. Vulnerability. We cannot expect students to be vulnerable and self-disclose through discussion boards or class discussions if we are not willing to share in that same vulnerability. Shame is not exclusive to generative AI. Shame is subtle and explicit, imposed and self-inflicted. Shame looks like calling out a student in front of the entire class. Shame looks like not turning in an assignment on time and missing class for the rest of the semester. Shame looks like judging students for missing more than 2 classes or lying about a death in the family. Shame wears many faces, and yours is one of them. Consider how you overcome shame as a person. Consider how you will actively avoid shaming students and help them overcome their own struggles with shame. This level of vulnerability empowers students to ask, to take risks, and to learn through failure. Some examples through coursework. Here are 2 examples. The first is an assignment that I have in my public speaking class, where basically I have them analyze a 6 to 10-minute video from a list I've provided. They're allowed to use AI, but must cite it at the bottom of their paper. I have a few citation formats I've been playing around with, none of which are really satisfactory, but this is one of them. And I so far only had a few students use generative AI, at least that they've cited. I had one student I speculated had used it. Again, I stress, can't confirm, can't deny. Ultimately, they had to resubmit the assignment because they summarized it, they didn't analyze it, so it's fine, it all worked out. I'm not concerned with cheaters, and you shouldn't be either. Cheaters are going to cheat, and they're going to learn the hard way somewhere else, but not with me. The classroom is a space for learning, not policing. If students can't fail here, where else are they allowed to? In my same public speaking class, I also dedicate 2 weeks to research, which includes workshops, discussions, and lectures on generative AI. This is the first class activity I use to introduce them to the idea of generative AI, reminding them that it's entirely optional and it does not affect their grading or performance in the class whether or not they choose to use generative AI in the classroom. This second prompt that I've used, create an outline for a 12-minute informative speech, simultaneously engages their upcoming informative speech assignment, utilizes the textbook, and introduces them to prompt engineering. Between these examples, there are many ways to acknowledge and implement these tools in our classroom. Ideally, I would recommend providing several opportunities to discuss and experiment. A brief mention on the first day or last day of class defeats the purpose entirely. You might as well just not use generative AI or center it in the classroom. Thank you. These are the 4 takeaways. Walk away from anything in this presentation, I hope it's these 4 things. Start with your syllabus and create mutual dialogue with your students. Use generative AI to augment students' skills that they lack so you don't feel like you have to catch them up to speed. For instance, public speaking may not be your forte or the class that you teach, but you can still reinforce those skills if you have a presentation-based final or assignment in the class. And this is especially true for skills that you don't feel familiar or comfortable with. And lastly, centering vulnerability and integrity. It cultivates shame-free spaces where students are allowed to fail in order to succeed. Thank you.
All right, hold those questions until the end. Thank you, Chris. Way to get us started. We will go ahead and switch over to Cassandra. Also, feel free to put questions in the chat if you want to kind of save them there.
Unmute myself. Hi, I'm Cassandra. I'm a lecturer in the art department. And for the third semester, I have done a unit called, I teach digital media. So we do a unit called, Is AI Art, in parentheses, in the context of the history of conceptual art. So we start out asking the question, can AI make art? Can AI be art? And students have opinions. We go through the lectures, we go through making, and then we stage this a debate. And it's really interesting to see how many students shift their position, how many students double down on their position, and how many people kind of come somewhere in the middle. So this unit does not come out of a vacuum. We start the semester with a unit called Complexity, Indeterminacy, and Montage, which is a way of a lead-in for learning Photoshop. And we talk a lot about the early history of digital media and how the cyberneticists and the conceptual artists were influencing each other back and forth in the 50s and 60s. And in that unit, we talk about things like recombinatorial literature. William S. Burroughs would talk about like cut up poetry, where he'd cut up poems and kind of throw things up and rearrange words. And we look at montage artists from the Dadaist era, Weimar era, World War II, who were going to magazines and newspapers and cutting things up and rearranging them and creating some sort of content, context, and meaning through images that they got from somewhere else. And then this is a Hannah Hoke photo montage from 1919 and a John Hartfield photo montage from 1930. Oh, why is sorry, I can't get to the next slide. There we go. And then the second unit is a video unit called Time and Process. And in that unit, we talk about the dematerialization of the art object and spontaneity and the happenings of fluxus and so forth. And how the art was no longer about just an object that you hung somewhere. Art became very much about the process of making the art. And so we look at by the time we get to the AI art unit, we then bring in some of those conceptual artists like Yoko Ono, who offered instructions as the art. So her snow piece, think that snow is falling, think that the snow is falling everywhere all the time. When you talk with a person, think that snow is falling between you and on the person. Stop conversing when you think the person is covered by snow. That's a painting, says Yoko Ono. So then when we look at the AI art, oh, sorry, do you have a question?
Just real quickly, I don't think that your slides are moving. So it's still on the first slide.
It's still on the first slide.
It's the PDF.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Should I go back to the I can go back to
whatever you're sharing, it's the PDF, and it just shows the first slide. I don't know if that's the same for everybody else.
All right. Is this better if I go back to, let me close the PDF. If I'm back on the now
Maybe
can you see
stop sharing and then share again. That often helps.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you. So I'll try going back to the to the PowerPoint. Okay. So now you see Yoko Ono. Awesome. Let me get this to the oops.
Don't worry, it's gonna happen to me, I'm pretty sure, when it's my turn.
Use slideshow. Okay. So we look at artists who use instructions as art. And so then when we get to the AI unit, they're using the text to image generators, which are providing instructions to the computer to make art, to fetch and scrape from the internet images that other people made. So when we first posed the question, is AI art, one of the kickbacks that we get is, well, it's stealing other people's work, or it's it's not the work that I created. But then we go back and talk about, well, how is it different than what John Hartfield and Hannah Hoke were doing with their photo montage? Weren't they also stealing other people's work and reassembling it? And then there's the debate of, well, okay, it was their brain thinking about how to assemble it, and in this case, the computer's thinking about how to assemble it. But they have the let me do this one first. Sorry. So the other critique of the text to AI generators is, again, it's stealing, it's not original. I'm not creating it. Who's the author? And then we talk about postmodern artists who post challenges to things like authorship and originality. So sorry, that argument doesn't fly. We've already tread that ground in the 80s and 90s. Right? So this is Sherry Levine, who would appropriate other people's work and put her name on it, like in the style of Walker Evans, or this one's called After Walker Evans #4. And we look at Morimura, a Japanese artist who would appropriate the paintings of famous old masters, painters from the Renaissance and beyond, and then would he'd photograph himself as characters in this painting. So again, there's original thinking going on. He's in dialogue with these paintings, but he's still appropriating something from somebody else. So if you're using a text to image generator, yes, you are stealing other people's work. Yes, you are not necessarily authoring what you're scraping and grabbing from the internet, but other artists have done this in other contexts. And we talk about how IP law was intellectual property law was such a mess in the 80s and 90s because these artists were appropriating other people's work. And so then they have an assignment whereby they need to use the text to image generators to create a minimum of 10 images and arrange those into some sort of graphic novel. Or they can make a video by putting stills into a timeline, which they already learned how to do in the video unit. Or they can do a performance. And it was actually a student one semester who came up with this idea. And I said, hey, can I use that from now on? She was a world builder. I have no doubt she'll go into video games. She was a world builder, and she would create these beautiful kind of like stage sets. Like I have a fake background in Zoom. This was a semester we were online. So she used the AI to create these stage sets that would be her fake background, and she would do performances, and it was fabulous. So I brought that into the semesters going forward. So far, she's still the only person that's done it though. But I had originally required them to do 15 images, and they got so passionate about it, they were up all night. And so I reduced it to 10 because it sounds so easy, like just generate 10 images. That's 10 seconds. But it's actually, they find quickly, it's really, really difficult to get the computer to create the kind of image that you want. And the computer actually isn't doing all the work, that you're actually putting a lot of thought into it. And then when you have a series of images, like 10 and it's a minimum of 10 for a graphic novel, then you need to get some sort of consistency among the images so that they read as a story, so that there's continuity. And then if you're trying to bring out some sort of emotion, we've had some beautiful tragedies in terms of stories, we've had 2 about loss that were we made us weep, right? And so how do you get the computer to evoke these emotions in people? So they find out it's not so easy as just typing something in and boom, the computer makes your art. There is actually a lot of thought in it. And it actually, over the years, has made me pose this question to myself: can text to image generators actually make you a better writer? So, we fear ChatGPT and what that will do to students' writing skills. And it's kind of funny, I have so much fun with the text to image generators, but I find ChatGPT like an existential threat. Like ChatGPT causes me anxiety because I feel like running and writing are the 2 things I do best in life. And if suddenly ChatGPT to do it so well, like why, what's my role now in life? But somehow the text to image generators, they're not as threatening to me. They're fun. I don't quite understand that, but what I've found is in order to make the computer do what you want it to do, to make the generator do what you want it to do, you have to get more and more and more specific in how you describe and how you use your words. And I didn't realize that going into the project. So that was kind of interesting. So some student work. A lot of the student work comes out looking like children's books, like very illustration type look. And so I really appreciate those students who push the AI to get kind of painterly. So this was a great example of somebody who wrote a story. This was about this particular slide. It's 10 slides, but this particular slide is about addiction, people in her life that she's known with addiction. And so she gets this very painterly, fragmented look that mimics the mental state. And then this piece I thought was a great example. He's a filmmaker, and he's let me get out of this one and go here, showing how he has to think about all his camera angles. So he had to generate and generate and generate these images to get the shots, those classic kind of over the shoulder shots and incorporate film language. So I thought it demonstrated the thinking of the student versus the thinking of the computer. You don't just generate 10 things. You got to keep going and going and going until you get what you want. And there's a lot of editorial thought that goes in. So, all right, I think my time is up. And that's my spiel.
Great. Thank you, Cassandra. Lots to think about just from these two presentations already. And I think that brings us to Ernie.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. I just dropped a PDF copy of my PowerPoint just in case it freezes here or something. So
Okay, great.
hope you can find that. All right. Let me try sharing. Let me know if you're seeing the notes view or the slide view.
Okay.
Okay. Do I press the slideshow first? I can't remember anymore. Okay, what are you seeing? Is it this?
So the whole screen. Oh, we do see both.
You see both. Oh,
yes.
You see both.
Yeah.
You see the notes view?
Yes.
Ah. How about now?
Nope.
What do you see?
Just the slideshow.
Just a slideshow. And now it's the notes view again?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna end show for now. Let me just do this. Is this okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you very much for your patience, everyone. Hi, I'm Ernie, Maria Ernita Joaquin. I'm an associate professor of public administration. I belong to the College of Health and Social Sciences and the School of Public Affairs and Civic Engagement. So as you can see, the title is The Logic of Foolishness. Coming after, speakers Chris and Cassandra on, playfulness, child's work, failing to succeed, existential threats. I think it's a very good flow that we have here in our presentation. So the subtitle here is Revisiting the Ideas of This Guy, James March, a giant in decision-making theory in the literature. So this is like an interpretivist, presentation of James March's ideas for the age of AI in teaching and learning. So as you can see, this is partly a play on words. So we've got smart assistants, clever assistants being so intelligent, whereas this talk is calling for foolishness among us humans and educators in dealing with intelligent machines. So you can think of this presentation as somewhat philosophical, but a way of finding some principles, from the decision-making literature to give us footing, find our footing in using AI in teaching and learning. So think about this. What bugs you? What bugs us about ChatGPT? Right? And we hear that, we've been hearing that for years now. But really, what does it violate in our world? I say circa 2024 because, the answers might be different tomorrow or 2025. What is it really that threatens us? Is it the disruption? Is it about the disruption or of academic integrity? Is it about honesty, or is it something more, something deeper? And so what I'm saying is maybe we can find insights from theorists or thinkers from the learning and decision-making literature. A bit of context about myself. I teach and I think because I don't have a lot of time to write, I say in administrative theory, organization and management, and bureaucratic reform. So part of this is translating ideas from organization and management to how we deal with, to pedagogy, how we deal with AI in teaching and learning. And it's not a coincidence that my rereading of Herbert Simon's equal, I call him, in the decision-making world, James March, leads me to conclude that a lot of our discomforts with AI and the remedies for these discomforts stem from our beliefs about learning, about choice, and about ourselves. So talk about existential, right? We hear a lot about, fake data, invasion of privacy, weaponization of information, but those are problems of law, crime, behaviors that are not always necessarily about the technology or domain of learning and discovery, which is the focus of this talk. So what is it about James March and his work? Okay, if you have to read one article or material from James March body of work, I'll say look for that one that talks about the garbage can model of decision making. It's based on universities as what he called organized anarchies. Okay, in this model of decision making within universities, he saw us, you and I, okay, professors, as decision makers looking for work. Okay, we are so used to this model of rational choice theory wherein we have problems looking for solutions. But James March and company with Cohen, Olson, Seart, and March, Herbert Simon, okay, they enrich the theory of decision making by acknowledging, by doing a lot of research and making us see that we don't really follow rational choice theory. Okay, we actually do not plan and then act. We act and then we rationalize and say, we actually planned this, okay? We don't have problems that look for solution. We actually have a lot of answers or ideas in our heads looking for issues to which we can attach them, okay? So solutions are looking for answers in this organized anarchy or university setting. They also talk a lot about information processing and sequential decision making. If we can think of our work as educators, as educators in terms of information processing or systems of information processing, and looking at sequential decision making in teaching students and designing our program learning goals or even our student learning objectives in our syllabi. If you can think of it that way, that would help us again look for these some logic in non-logicality. Okay, allow ourselves to be more playful. As he said, look for this technology of foolishness, um, allow serendipity. Okay, acknowledge randomness and fluidity in behavior in terms of, in this instance, teaching and learning. So this garbage can model of decision making teaches us that there are a lot of questions that we can raise in terms of understanding our goals as educators. What is this deep unease about AI in our world? It's because it's making us face the extent to which our values, goals, and choices are up in the air. Okay. I'm not just speaking in terms of higher ed. We can be talking about everything from K to 12 to higher ed. What really is the goal of education? What is the goal of learning? And that question itself may be examined in the age of AI. Okay? Are we so used to having total control of our programs, our syllabi? That certainty moving towards that loss of control and having a lot of uncertainty. Are we so used to having structure, okay, that tradition, and moving towards that, a lot of freedom where, again, this loss of control is happening? Do you want that? we have theories of adult learning. For example, right now, I teach in graduate program, right? And we are in higher ed as we speak right now. We're in colleges and universities. But AI is also, being used or being felt, having a lot of implications in K to 12. Are we scared that our theories of adult learning, are going to have to move toward acknowledging that learning and teaching must include that element of child's play again? Maybe I'm talking too abstractly, and part of this is because I'm trying to speak faster. But in the decision-making world, the richness that James March and company injected in that literature, came from their advocacy and their research in having us move from understanding how to make good decisions to understanding how good goals might come about. Think about that in each of your courses that you teach, okay? Those goals are up in the air now. We are used to having program learning goals. So for example, think of goals as being nested. So we in the Master of Public Administration program, we've got accreditors, got an accrediting body that says, these are the program learning goals. And then you've got, your student learning objectives within each of your syllabi. Okay. Those things are are nested, and they're very structured. You've got control, you've got certainty, and we're teaching adults. But let me tell you that even in graduate education, if you're teaching research methods and research design, you ask students, what would you like your research to be about? They're so at a loss. Very few of them know what they really want to do, okay? The age of AI is demanding that we see this as the reality, okay? We are not, conforming to this economic framework that we are rational individuals with preset goals and we follow these goals linearly, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe it's the other way around. We have to discover our goals as we go along. So play when James March talked about the logic of foolishness or logic of foolishness, he was inserting or trying to let us rediscover this idea of play in decision making in whatever we do. He called play an instrument of intelligence. It's not a substitute, okay, for intelligence. It's our strict insistence on purpose, consistency, and rationality limits our ability to find new purposes. But play relaxes that insistence to allow us to act unintelligently or irrationally or non-rationally or foolishly to explore alternative ideas of possible purposes and alternative concepts of behavioral consistency. And it does that while maintaining our basic commitment to intelligence. So some sort of summary here of what March was talking about in his essay. Again, this is about organizational decision making. I'm trying to translate it, to a philosophy of dealing with AI in teaching and learning. He said, combine the technology of reason with the technology of foolishness. Okay. In this age of AI, okay, with Chat GPT being able to not just, second guess us or suggest things to us, okay, we have to really become more self-aware. Okay, what theories are in our heads as educators? What theories of human intelligence and choice do we hold, and what are their constraints? So in his writings, in his body of work, he talked about what decision dogmas should we unlearn or revisit, and we can reframe those in the age of AI. So this one, the dogma of pre-existent goals. Do we know what we want to teach? Do we really know what we want them to learn, or are we going to discover those goals as we go along? This dogma of planning, okay, the dogma of consistency, the dogma of rules, hierarchical communication, coordination, control, the dogma of overlearning, history, and memory. So obviously, I cannot share a lot of these in detail here, but as I would suggest that you guys revisit or check out James March, and again, that particular writing on garbage can and the technology of foolishness. So he advocates for, he's not advocating. His research compels us to discover rather than dictate learning goals and situation. So ChatGPT and similar tools, they allow for a greater, exchange of meaning. One definition of adult learning is that learning is an exchange of meaning. Learning can be changed. Learning could be a lot of things, but ChatGPT is making us, giving us greater opportunities for these exchanges. But can we permit ourselves and our students to experiment before we set rules in stone? And I think CETL, in all its works, in all its symposia and everything, have been asking us, maybe before we set any rules in stone, we can learn from our students and educators. So in this very, this framing that we don't really plan before we act, we actually act before we plan, okay? We don't really have problems that look for solutions. Sometimes, often, we have solutions that look for problems. Well, the world's still moving. We have to move. AI is here. It's changing right in front of our eyes, right? What are some implications for this? So with AI, can we rediscover our playful inner adventurers in a cognitively stretched? We are so stretched, right? Overloaded information and everything. But we're all also very bureaucratized, and it's a very performative world. How are you going to do this? Okay, and also, what are wider implications of foolishness, playfulness, serendipity, okay, and goal experimentation in teaching and learning with AI? Will deeply embedded structures allow us to wreck the syllabus? Keep hearing that slogan, wreck the syllabus. So anyway, I'll close by saying we see a lot of turbulence in campuses nowadays, right? Some of it old, like war protests, some of them somewhat old, like questioning what academic freedom or neutrality means. And now we have something that is not just new, but renews itself, okay, every minute. So as we try to find our footing with using AI in teaching and learning, I think we could do worse than look to the giant thinkers of decision making like James March for answers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yeah, so much to think about, and I really appreciate all the questions the speakers are also proposing to us. I know I'm writing down notes that I just need to think through myself and how I'm thinking about AI. Okay, let's head over to Nasser.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. Awesome. Hello, everyone. Great discussion. Thank you, Cyril. Thank you, Jessica. I also appreciate everybody who are here. Very good discussions. Very good discussions. I'm so glad to see a lot of people are enthusiastic about AI than being like more nervous. I'm so glad again, and I'm so thankful of Cyril to create this discussion so that we can have like a focus more on the positive side of that and be able to use it to our benefit rather than just being, taking sit back and like, be anxious. Okay, so my presentation going to be a little bit different in the sense that I'm like, let me actually just share my screen with you. So, okay, oh, no, not this one. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about today is just to talk about one of the practices that I do of using AI in my classrooms. Since I was using AI, oh, well, by the way, let me actually first introduce myself. My name is Nasser Sharasvi. I'm an associate professor of information systems at the Lam Family College of Business. I'm also the director of the Lam Larson Initiative for Emerging Technologies. So as the title of this, probably I'm really tech enthusiasm. So I really take the tech tools fun. I try to have fun with that and then try to be able to actually use them in the benefit of me, myself, and also my students. One of the things that I use the AI in my course design and classroom is to be able to create affordable teaching and learning to make more accessible stuff for the people, for especially my students. And one of the practices that I started long time ago, but with AI tools like ChatGPT and Cloud AI and things like that, it got really helpful. accelerated my speed was to be able to create material for my class and be able to use essentially self-guided or self-learning modules for my students. Now, there's a couple of tools that I'm using, and I'm not going through like how I'm doing the whole thing because that's gonna take a little bit of time. Today, I'm just gonna focus on how do I use ChatGPT or tools like that for creating your question banks, because that's gonna be like when you are on a publisher, they usually provide like question banks with there, and that's one of the advantages of the publishers, assignments, question banks, and all this stuff. But when you are deciding to have your own material or your own self-learning modules, and you're dependent you're depending on yourself, and so one of the most time-consuming and tedious works is to be able to come up with the question bank. Jessica, please let me know when I have to finish it. I don't have you completely on my side. So I don't know how many of you have used ChatGPT. Can you show me with a thumbs up if you have used ChatGPT or things for the question banks? Cool. Okay. Great. So you're pretty familiar. I'm just like so probably for most of you, it's going to be like just a repetition. Or like maybe I'll teach you like how to automate part of the process. So using ChatGPT for like question bank is pretty straightforward, pretty like essentially it should be really straightforward. You just type like a prompt like give me 20 questions from the text that I give you, and then it gives you the questions. Now you're going to specify things like give me like 20 I don't know, like multiple choice questions, right? You can give like the type of questions. I need like questions that test the understanding of the students. Or I need true or false questions. I need essay questions, right? So these are all going to be like, again, and it should be really straightforward. You can say, give me 20 questions from this text. And multiple questions. Again, you don't, one of the beauty of the ChatGPT is on, you don't need to be like super organized, have like super clean prompt, just write it down, and then it's going to give you multiple choices, true, false, and let's say matching, right? And this is the text. So just copy and text, copy and paste the text. Now, one good thing about it is that if you're using ChatGPT 3.5, you probably need to, the free version, you probably need to copy and paste, and you have limitation of 3,000 characters. And if you are using ChatGPT 4, then you can actually like add, in fact, another good thing is that you can actually copy and paste the URL and it can read if you're using the 4. But you can actually use your PDF or other material that you have, just dump in there if you're using the 4, and then you can say that, well, give me the questions from the PDF, right? Or like from the Word file or whatever you have, right? Okay. Now, where can you be a little bit more automated? Well, one caution, please double check your questions, because ChatGPT and LLM tools are prone to hallucinations. So there are like, even though like most of the topics that we are discussing here is familiar for the ChatGPT or like most of these LLM tools, because for the level of the studies, which is undergrad studies at our school, or even grad, the probability of making mistakes of selecting the right answer is high with ChatGPT. Now, one of the things that I did for my own class is, again, this is possible if you're using ChatGPT 4 and if you're paying for the service. I built test creator, test pack creator for myself using the custom GPT. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the custom GPT. No? Okay. The custom GPT, I'll go very quickly over that because I don't want to spend time on this one. Custom GPT is essentially a GPT that you create yourself. So it's kind of like if you're creating a piece of software for yourself that do a specific task for you. So again, like I'll show you my custom GPT here. So then essentially I have like this one. And again, you can use like this custom GPT for many different sort of things, right? So you can use it for answering the question of the students for, you can give it your syllabus to it. So you can give actually like documents and as, you know, assumed document, let's say, right, as a given. And then the students and then you can make it a tutor, right? So the students can like ask about the syllabus and chat with the by chatting with that with the custom GPT. Essentially, like you can go here and then give directions. So I say, for instance, I'll show you actually like the GPT that I built. So upon entry, let me actually show it. Yes, via GPT. Upon entry, if I say hi, it would greet me and say, okay, how many questions do you want? I ask it to, okay, it says, hi, I'm here to create your custom test bank. Could you please provide me with the text you would like based on the question you have and the number of the question you need and the preferred text format, right? Kind of like I like automate like part of the process. So every time that I'm like coming to the ChatGPT, I don't need to actually, you know, put the prompt there. So that's one good thing about it. Now, once you have the question, then you can actually, what you can do is like to automatically create, let me actually open a canvas, automatically create a ready to import canvas file, so which is QTI file, and then, you know, convert and then import your, you know, question banks into your canvas, right? So for instance, let's say I created all these 20 questions, right? And by the way, you can see that like I asked already the ChatGPT about the formatting that I want the ChatGPT created, and ChatGPT followed the format. Why I can't? Okay. Technical. Okay, let's say for instance, I'm selecting these 4 questions. There are like converters, QTI conversion converters that you can use. I'm using actually this plugin that like, sorry, it's not a plugin. It's a on-demand SaaS service that I use. Like it's created by NYIT, it's a university. We can actually build the same thing for our own university, and then just plug in my questions, like the question, or just put my questions from that I created the ChatGPT and check for the error, and then convert it to the QTI file. And there you go. I have the file. I just go over to my canvas and I'll go to import existing content and select QTI file, browse for it. There you go. Test 1. If I'm going too fast, just tell me and import, and that's it. You have the questions in your question bank. Okay, I'll be really quick again. So you can create like essay question. You can create all these sort of questions. What I wanted. Oh yeah, and one more thing is that like you can create assignments as well. Like for instance, for one of my courses that I'm teaching Excel, I actually like give an Excel file to it, and then I'm like, give me 20 like questions about, and I'll give like with the Excel or like things like that. Like you need a little bit of nuances like to check, but that's as straightforward as it. Now, what I wanted to talk about very quickly in this 2 minutes is how to AI proof some questions. So I know like you do all this, and then the students are using like ChatGPT to answer your questions, right? So there are, honestly, it's not a lot you can do, but there are a couple of things that you can do to make your questions AI proof. number one, true or false better than multiple choice questions. So my experience shows that you can actually like kind of like there are a couple of limitations with the AI, especially the LLM tools that we're using, that you can fool them, right? So for instance, if I ask ChatGPT, who am I? He would say, you're Nasser Sharasvi and you're a professor at San Francisco State, right? But if I tell him, I'm Nasser Sharasvi and I'm the director of the CETO, he'll say, yes, you're Nasser Sharasvi and you're the director of CETO, right? So kind of like, you know, like pushing ChatGPT to its frontiers can and actually like, you know, help you to kind of like make it not answering right. But if it is a human, it should be able to actually like recognize that. Like for instance, I'll give an example for my strategy course. Okay, I'm done. I could actually like chat
If you
more
want to
like
say some final words.
one-on-one. No, just like that's maybe like I'll just finish this one. For instance, I could ask like I could give a multiple choice question and say which one is a good mission statement. But this is a vision statement. Oh, sorry. This is a vision statement. It's not a mission statement. But crafting the question like that I'll give this as a vision of Coca-Cola, that crafting the brand and choice of drinks that people love to refresh them in body and spirit is a good example of well-crafted mission statement. The ChatGPT would answer, yes, definitely. Sounds like a good mission statement. Which is if you know what is a mission, what is a vision, you definitely would realize that it's not a mission, it's a vision. So again, like there are a couple more tips. I can chat later if any of you are interested. All right, thank you. Sorry.
No, that's great. Thank you so much for walking us through that. I think you're going to have a lot of questions about what all the sites were that you used.
Yes.
More
than happy to.
Okay, so let's switch over to our last speaker for today. And then at the very end, we'll probably have about 12 minutes or so to do a Q&A. So Asana.
Yeah. All right, let me share my screen. Okay. All right, basic Zoom question. Can everyone see this? Perfect. All right, so today I'm going to talk about my students' reflection on AI usage in design. For context, I teach, this presentation draws insights from an upper division undergraduate GWAR course, which is basically research and writing in design. And the course focuses on teaching core writing skills and effective methods for researching, analyzing, and evaluating design with a social justice lens. And within that, I cover like descriptive writing, expository writing, persuasive writing, and narrative writing, but within the context of design. So this semester, inspired by the TPAC model, or Technological Pedagogical Content Knowledge, which is a framework for the integration of technology in the classroom, I explicitly integrated AI into my curriculum. TPAC was first introduced by Punya Mishra and Matthew J. Coiler from at Michigan State University in 2006, and identifies these three forms of knowledge: technological knowledge, pedagogical knowledge, as well as content knowledge, and integrates them for an innovative approach to teaching and learning. Now, keeping that model in mind, here you see the use of generative AI classroom policy that I shared with my students. These were basically composed by Annette Wee, who's also an associate professor of English and director of composition in University of Pittsburgh. So I don't forbid my students from using AI, but I want them to be transparent about it and acknowledge the use of it. And this policy also covers like how can you cite how to source or cite the use of AI in the MLA Chicago style. So that's one of the things. So as I integrated AI, I had a couple of assumptions about the AI usage by the students. So I assumed that there's going to be digital literacy, that students possess foundational digital literacy skills, enabling them to navigate and utilize AI tools effectively. I also assume there's going to be engagement. Students would take the initiative to explore AI tools independently, seek out relevant resources, and adapt their learning strategies to incorporate new technologies into their design practice. And then self-directed learning, because students would be actively engaged through the learning process, and demonstrating interest and enthusiasm for exploring this new tool. That is, I'm not sure about other industry, but in the design industry, AI is booming right now. And then I also assume like openness to innovation, that students will be receptive to integrating AI technologies into their design workflows. This includes embracing the potential for AI to enhance creativity, efficiency, and problem solving in design. So the students are allowed to use AI for 2 of their projects. One is a design research report, and the other is a poster campaign. Here you see an example of a research report that the students worked on the Bay Area housing crisis. The students' research culminated into this design research report to gain a thorough understanding of a complex crisis in the Bay Area. Now, for this project, students choose their own assignment topics, which like keeps them engaged in the class and gives them a voice and fosters like a deep real world engagement with research and design, and also the community that they're researching or the problem that they're researching. And for research reports, students were allowed to use ChatGPT to edit some of their writing. Another assignment where students are allowed to use generative AI. So when they're done with their research report, students are assigned to create like a compelling poster campaign, which addresses the issues that they discovered in their research report. So here you see some of the posters that the students worked on, focusing on different social justice issues. And for this particular assignment, students were encouraged to use Adobe Express, Adobe Firefly, as well as Photoshop and Illustrator's generative AI tools. So design generative AI tools. And as students complete their assignments with the use of AI, they have to write a statement of acknowledgement talking about how they use the AI for their projects. So for example, in the first example, you see the student wrote that when crafting questions for the survey and interview script assignment, I found it difficult to not sound overly repetitive in phrases while also not sounding plain in my inquiries. So with the help of free AI tool, and they use deep AI instead of ChatGPT. There's so many tools out there. I was able to find ways to paraphrase or expand on my thoughts and create informative, sensible questions. Here's another statement from the poster project where the student acknowledged that they used Adobe Express for the campaign creation assignment. The asset tools were really helpful and adding subtleties to graphic. In my other and previous classes, I have used AI like ChatGPT and Adobe Firefly to help me give a general idea. So students do acknowledge their use and they are transparent about it, because I don't tell them that, hey, you're going to be punished if you use it. So we have these, try to be, I don't know how honest they're being, but we do try to have these open conversations. Now, as I said at the beginning of the presentation, that these were some of the assumptions that I had when I, at the beginning of the course, when I tried to integrate AI into the design pedagogy. And these are the findings that I have right now, that through these students' reflection, I realized that some of these assumptions are not true. Students do not currently have the digital literacy to use AI effectively. For example, a student mentioned, I find that whenever I use Adobe Firefly to generate images from a prompt, it doesn't really convey what I want and feels emotionless. I would have to adjust the prompt multiple times, but it still does not help. So they don't know how to send it, write the right prompts. Similarly, students who are not too excited to engage with the tool, they were, so for example, here, it's an excerpt from a student's reflection. An online creator named Bernie Burns said it best: the internet demands progress and hates change. AI is a system of progress, whether we like it or not, it's here to stay. So there's this resistance. And then students were also less, they were not too excited to engage, and they were also less willing to explore AI tools on their own and learn the tool to facilitate their process. They kind of perceived it as a crutch, something, the fears that we as professors also had for them. So here, the student mentioned that the inevitable outcome of AI becoming less of a tool and more of a crutch for creatives. I already have this issue with math because I have a calculator and grew up using one. I can barely do basic math myself despite years of education in the subject. And I feel like that, that use of analogy is just so true because we're so dependent on our phone and calculators. And then I also felt there, and I also noticed that the student showed less resistance to using AI for writing. But when it came to their design process, they really thought about the ethics and authorship of their work. So for example, when it was about like, I assume that they're going to be open to using these AI tools for their design process. So students straight up wrote that I did not use any sort of AI tools when working on my design work because I see it as a destroyer of the art. I generally do use AI when it comes to writing work. Though I only use it as a tool to find ideas and find my footing around the subject, I still physically write my own words and just use the generated content as a rough draft. So there's still, and I'm not saying that all students said that, but most students had this resistance to this AI. So implications for future. So through this integration, what I learned is going forward in the next semester, this is what I plan on doing to increase digital literacy in AI. If I do want to support that in the classroom, I would encourage active learning by integrating more hands-on assignments, workshops, as well as tutorials. Because in the presentation that before mine, there was so much that you could do with ChatGPT that even I don't know. And I was like feeling a little like, oh, what? This can be done. So I think I need to learn myself and then also share that with the students. Another is engagement, like organize guest lectures featuring industry professionals or experts in AI and design to inspire students and spark their curiosity. Because right now, students are really shut off from it. And unfortunately or fortunately, they have to learn this tool for the design industry if they want to progress in the industry. So I do plan on like showing them some case studies or having some industry experts to encourage them engage with the tool. And then there's self-directed learning, like provide a curated list of resources, including tutorials, articles, case studies, so that they understand the use of AI and its application in design. And then also, I plan on fostering discussions and debates around the ethical, social, and cultural implications of AI in design to deepen their understanding and critical thinking, because AI is a tool, but it's like any other tool, it's not perfect. Like any other tool, there's an issue of authorship, there's an issue of ethics. And yeah, so this is, I know I have 2 minutes, but this was the last slide, and I'll just wrap up my presentation with that. So thank you.
Wow. Okay. Round of applause for all of our speakers. Digital emojis are encouraged. Okay. So we have like 8 or so minutes. Are there any questions, burning questions right now that anybody would like to ask our speakers? Feel free to add to the chat or unmute. I know we had a question come in earlier, and just so all the speakers know, the chat has been active in responses to everything that's been said. Maybe we could navigate to the question that came, if I can find it, in response to Ernie's presentation.
Yeah. Jessica, there's a question here from Joshua. How might this approach, right, from James March's Technology of Foolishness be translated into something legible to administrators who want to see clear SLOs and PLOs, right? That's the question. Is this something that we have to hide from them, right? We have to protect or conceal this kind of playful approach from the logic of university bureaucracy. And I type in here that, yeah, it is the $1,000,000 question, right? How do we experiment, fail? How do we learn and unlearn? within a structure that relies on consistency, planning. What are your goals ahead of time? 2 semesters ahead of time, So, but one example, or from the principle of sequential decision making. So he's not necessarily, James Marsden is necessarily saying, just play. He's got a lot of principles there about decision making, again, based on the behavior of professors, of faculty, universities. And one of them is sequential decision making. It's not all goals may be attained realistically. So maybe we can take a look at, if we have 5 program learning outcomes, or PLOs, as we call them. Maybe, we look at them and say, maybe, engagement and belonging, inclusion, some of those goals may have to go up sometime, and some of those may have to be pushed down. So not being so preset in that kind of thinking, where we dictate, these are the goals of the program, these are the goals for this course. Being able to have that flexibility and not be too dogmatically consistent. Thanks, Joshua.
Great. And we kind of had another question come in. One, also just to answer, we do have some resources at CETL that Jennifer Trainer kind of led the charge on for creating, and I'll put those in the chat. But there was also a question from Rochelle about, so I'd love to see different professors and departments' AI policies. And I think a question is, we saw a lot of different policies from the panelists around AI use in your class. And just curious, maybe like, how did you come to that policy? How do you feel about it? If anybody wants to maybe reiterate what their policy is and just share a little bit about your AI policy. Okay, Chris. Oh, Chris.
I'll share a little bit briefly, is that it's a free reign, and I allow my students and encourage them to use it as like an augmentative tool. And again, it won't hinder their grading or performance in the class, whether they choose to use or not use it. But my policy in its simplest terms is they have the option, as long as they disclose, right? And so, as a few other panelists have specified as well, Sana and Cassandra and other folks, that we can't always guarantee that they're going to be honest, right? But tutors are going to cheat. And I find, both in research and in practice, that students are actually less inclined to cheat because the risk and fear of getting caught is just outweighs the risk of doing it. So it's just more beneficial to focus on how it can benefit the majority over like the 1 or 2 students who might be abusing it.
For me, I have in my syllabus that the undisclosed use of ChatGPT is considered plagiarism. But then I try to design assignments so that they don't want to use the ChatGPT, except for the is AI art assignment, which they are encouraged to use it if they want to. So basically, I went to another AI panel at San Francisco State last year, and what I learned is that the students tend to use ChatGPT for writing they don't care about, and they don't want to use it for things that are more about their opinions and expressions and so forth. So I took that in, and for the reading responses, we do reading responses for each unit and an art project for each unit. And so the reading responses, I always tell them I don't want a summary. You can grab a summary off the internet. I don't want a summary that ChatGPT can make for you. I want to know your reactions, your opinions, what you liked, what you didn't like, and how it's going to influence your art. How might these authors' thinking change your thinking, and how will you bring it into your art or buck against it in your art? So I try to make it very, very subjective. And then for the is AI art unit, again, you're encouraged to use ChatGPT for the story portion if you want words, or you can not have words. It can be all visual, or you can use the ChatGPT to start out and edit it, or vice versa. You can write it and have ChatGPT edit it, and they do all sorts of different things. There's no one approach.
Great. Let's go to Sana, and then there is a question from Hui, which we'll see if we can get to that.
I'll be really quick. I would echo what Cassandra said. So I think it's important to recognize what each generative AI tool is being used for. So again, chat, I've noticed it's about authorship as well. When students they see their design work or creative work as an extension of themselves. So they want to avoid using AI because it should be from the scratch. It's me. People are going to come and critique it. But when there are assignments like reflections, observation that only instructors gonna read, and they're out of time because they have a million other things to do, just put a prompt and get it on with it. So there's it's about writing and creative work that I see a difference. Writing, they're not too passionate about, and because I'm teaching design students, creative work, they're just gonna be so resistant to the AI.
Yeah, thank you all. Hui, did you want to, do you have a question?
Yeah, sure. It's not so much a question, but great discussions. I actually want to share something about an AI policy I have come up with, but let me see where's oh yeah, here. So just to give you an idea, I'm from computer science department, and students are using AIs, generative AI. So in this case, called a co-pilot, to write programming to program. So I noticed that students really need guidance. I really like Chris earlier what he said. I encourage students to use AI, but they also need guidance. Many of you touch upon this point. So here's just to show you, students really appreciate those examples. And they have comments here, and they have questions. I basically work with my students to co-create this AI policy in my class. Strongly recommended, even though it's not in design, but hopefully gives this makes sense for you. Just from my students' perspective, they really appreciate this. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're going to be called out of the room, but an interesting question was posed around what's the purpose of the AI syllabus policy statement, and continuing to have some policy around plagiarism. For me, I think students want to know where the professors